Ryan Grimm is comparing Biden's recent call with civil rights leader to his time in the Senate, saying, quote, he rambled like the Biden we know, but he also lashed out like the one that we don't.
Intercept DC bureau chief and host of the Deconstructed podcast, and of course, great friend of the show, Ryan Grimm, is here to talk about what kind of leader President-elect Joe Biden may be. Great to see you, Ryan.
Good to see you, Ryan.
Oh, good to see you.
So we haven't had a chance to talk to you since you broke that, you got that audio
story
leaked to you, and then ultimately the full Zoom call leaked to you as well of Biden's interaction with civil rights leaders. I mean, I watched the whole thing, and I found it fairly shocking. Barely got any mainstream coverage, but first question to you is just sort of, what did you make overall of that transcript, the call, the Zoom call, and what it says about who Joe Biden is and how he's likely to govern?
Well, it shows that Joe Biden is the person that people have described over the years. So, in books and in articles that quote people who are close to him, and if you talk to some of his former staffers, he's a bit different than he is in public. In public, he's the affable Uncle Joe. In private, he has a bit of a kind of dry drunk temper. He's not a dry drunk. He's a teetotaler. He's never been somebody who drank at all. I don't know if that's connected to the temper or what, but he has it. He shows flashes of temper to his staff, and relatedly, he's always been known for going on and on in public meetings and in private meetings. When he was chairman of either Foreign Relations Committee or Judiciary Committee, everybody had to pencil in an extra amount of time if the gavel was in Biden's hands. This is sort of a Senate tradition, but he would stretch it to the breaking point in private meetings, both during the Obama administration and as a senator. He was known as the guy who thought of every meeting as sort of like a brainstorm session, and when it was his turn to talk, he would go off in different tangents, and the people in the room would kind of wait until he was done, and then they would move on with the business of the meeting. So what this meeting with civil rights leaders showed is that he's still that same guy, but now he's going to be the president of the United States, and so he's going to show that temper, to people who are challenging him, as he did with these civil rights leaders. And what he's done with his staff is that instead of where Obama, and not crediting for this, but where Obama put Republican Robert Gates as the defense secretary, and put Hillary Clinton, a powerful political figure, as Secretary of State, Biden has put a general who's known for following the chain of command, and his former Foreign Relations Committee aide as Secretary of State, the general over at the Pentagon. And so he's kind of surrounding himself who are going to indulge in the kind of soliloquies that he is kind of famous for in meetings, and in the rare times that he's going to get challenged, he's going to show that temper.
So let's talk about this, Ryan, which is that what did you see in terms of how this is going to manifest itself in governance? Because that's like the ultimate question. You talked last week about the ideological lottery, where basically they're picking people based upon the color of their skin, mostly, and then just whatever happens that they have to have ideology, they're like, oh, yeah, that's it. And to the extent there's a secondary factor, it's, oh, well, Joe likes him, and that's pretty much it. What does this mean now, the way he conducted himself in that call, about how he's going to act as president?
Well, so he has a lot of confidence in himself, and last night it was reported that he's saying that he's spoken with a number of Republican senators. I think this magic number was 7.
Yes, and
they passed on to him the intelligence that if he just kind of hangs tight for 6 to 8 months, let all of this furor over the stolen election die down, then Republican, the fever's going to break. And post-Trump, the Republicans are going to be ready to work with Joe Biden on infrastructure and on China. Those were the things mentioned. Now, 6 to 8 months just so happens to be roughly the amount of time that an incoming president has to do anything. That takes you right to the summer recess, and when you come back from the summer recess, you're into the fall, and you're into the midterm season, and the legislative window is fairly closed. The first summer of Obama's term was when the Tea Party rose up. So Biden hears this from Republicans, and and shares it with the press, credibly, saying that, wow, look at this, here
Yeah.
I'm going to bring people together, and so he feels like his ability to connect with people is going to be the key that unlocks this partisan gridlock.
Which is insane, obviously, clearly. But the thing that I actually, and I did a radar on this yesterday, that I kind of took from that whole call was he actually has a lot of similarities with Donald Trump. I mean, they're obvious or stylistic differences, and I think Biden's capacity for empathy and compassionate individual people is different from Trump. But both of them have all this undying faith in their own charm and ability to negotiate. Both of them ultimately turn out to be like basically ideology free and have these sort of like random casting call way of filling their administration. We've been covering here for a long time about how Biden on foreign policy, while the results may end up being different, he and Trump both essentially, they don't have a Biden doctrine or a Trump doctrine. It's all about like what their predecessor did and what foreign leaders they have good personal relationships with. Like that's the guiding star of what they ultimately do. I wonder if you see some of those parallels too and how that may ultimately play out.
Well, neither like to be challenged. And both have a confidence in their assertions that is not merited by the underlying substance of them. There were a couple exchanges where Biden very firmly told civil rights leaders that they were wrong about something factual, and he was wrong. Either he hadn't heard them correctly,
right,
or he had bad information. And he's the president-elect now, so they kind of just shrug and say, you're not really supposed to be correcting the president-elect. But I think on a deeper level, there's an interesting personality overlap in that both of them, for decades, have been longing for the approval of the establishment in different ways.
Yes.
True.
Biden, you would think, would have it. He's been a United States senator. He was elected when he was 29 years old. But because of the kind of his rambling approach to politics, he was never really kind of accepted as one of the elder statesmen of the Senate. People would kind of laugh at him. Like Tony Blinken, who's his Secretary of State, told the Washington Post years ago that Obama would roll his eyes whenever Biden would talk in committee. Biden when Biden was a freshman senator, and that was not uncommon. And Biden is self-aware enough to know that. He knows that people were kind of chuckling at him behind his back, and Trump too, knows that people were chuckling at him across the river, from Queens to Manhattan, and so both have this inferiority complex that they've been working out for their entire lives. Obviously, the ways in which they're different and the things that they believe in, you could talk about, you could talk endlessly about, but there are some interesting and, for Biden, disturbing kind of parallels.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Ryan, thank you so much, and congratulations, a great story, and I think a really important one that you broke last week.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, guys.
Coming up, Wall Street Journal columnist Sadanand Dume explains the impact of worker strikes in India and breaks all of that down when Rising returns.